And we are live with today's N10-008 study group. It's our pre-show. So for the next 10 minutes, I will be making sure that all of this craziness is where it should be. And so that it's a little less crazy. Just a smidge less crazy this time. We're in really good shape here. We are recording. We are streaming. Hello, Internet. Hello, chat room. Hello, everybody. Good to see everyone. People in the chat room already. Thank you for being here. We've got the Vevox info up. I guess I could put my face on that. There we go. There's our Vevox info. If you'd like to make sure you can connect before we get started here. Let's turn on our macros. I can get my face out of the way. There we go. Hey, chat room. Good to see you. I have an echo. There's no echo here. I'm listening in. There's no echo. There's an echo. You have two different screens up somewhere. So check to see how many different iterations. It doesn't help my numbers just by opening two up, or I tell you to do that. But no, do not do that. Do not open multiple windows. That just sucks more bandwidth than you really need. Oh, good to have everyone here. Thank you so much. You don't have to download any apps. You just follow the link on your screen to Vevox.com, or excuse me, Vevox.app. What was I saying? What were we thinking? Got to get the right one. Hello, South Africa. Thanks for checking in. Got Turkey is here. We've got other folks checking in I saw already from all around. Thanks for being here, chat room. We've got all new questions for you today for the N10-008 Network Plus. So don't worry, we will get things going. Hello, Nolans. Good to have you here. Thanks for joining us. Oh, I need to get back there. I haven't been there in quite some time. I'm trying to remember when the last time was, and it was a very long time ago. I need to change that. Texas is checking in. There's Austin. Reno, Nevada is here. Hello, Reno. Thanks for being here. Cleveland, Ohio. Got lots of folks checking in. We're just getting things ready. I normally start about 10 minutes early so I can make sure that everything with the stream is working. That's really the only thing I can't check is the stream. Well, give us an update on the echo thing. What was causing it? I think Kevin was the one saying there was echo. Did you find a rogue window? I suspect that's what was going on. There's Charlotte, North Carolina, Queen City. We got Gainesville, Virginia. Different than the other Gainesvilles. Careful. I'm in Florida, so that's the one I naturally think about. We've got Nigeria and Silver Spring, Maryland. My Maryland. Netherlands is here. Thanks for being here. Israel checking in. Thanks for joining us. There's Cincinnati. Talladega, Alabama is here. Spokane, Washington. Dallas, Texas. Well, that was weird. One window, and it was just echoing in the one window. Kevin, thank you for the follow-up. I don't know. Don't know what that was about. It was just being weird. There's folks in Hamilton, Canada. I got Kim folk in Hamilton. So thanks for checking in. I'll let Mrs. Professor Messer know. It's her side of the family. It's up in Canada. And I've been there many times. As a matter of fact, well, I wouldn't say many times. Been there a few times. Really, a few? Does that count? Yeah, I guess it does. I guess that's close enough. Figure out what's going on. There's Puerto Rico is here. We got Connecticut. We got South Africa. We got Dallas again. We got Seattle. Newport News is here. Lots happening. Thanks for being here. We have a lot. Mike's in the 305 down the big curve of the 826. Thanks, Mike, for checking in. We got few more minutes. We got about just over 5 minutes here. We'll get things going. Hello, India, Nigeria, Richmond, Virginia. Alberta is here. More Canada. Thank you, Canada, for being here. Thanks for checking in. My Security Plus study group is a week from today. You can always go to the calendar, www.professormesser.com/calendar, and you'll find it all. Flagler 97th. Okay, so you're out to the west, out that direction. That's definitely out there. And on Flagler Drive, too. My time in South Florida was spent in sort of the Miami Lakes area, sort of north and south of that, really. So, and a little bit in Hialeah, and then up in Broward, I lived in both Pembroke Pines and Miramar. So there you go. That's I think I lived in South Florida about 10 years. About 10 years. Just long enough. Just long enough. Oh, those were the days. I learned a lot there. I had great times there. Kind of miss it. Got to get back there. We do go down every once in a while to the South Florida area, so it's not that bad. Well, thank you. We got that going on. There's a lot that we've been doing here. I know you don't hear much when I'm not live, but the new Security Plus will be coming out shortly. So we're in the mode right now of building all of our videos and content for the Security Plus side. And so I've been sort of trapped in the studio. I have been in these four walls for quite some time for the last, well, it's been months. And so now we're at the part where we're shooting. We've been building content. I create the entire course first, and then I shoot every video. And right now that's 121 videos that it will finally be when this is finished. So that's why you haven't seen my face very much, except on these live streams, which thankfully we are having. I could not imagine setting this up and then not having a break in there to be able to do these live streams. So. Will programmers be replaced by AI? I don't know, someday, right? Not anytime soon. Have you seen what AI creates? It's awful. Hey, create me an ugly picture. There's AI. Oh, thank you. I was hoping I could get an ugly picture, and there it is. And that so far is the only real practical use I've seen of what we are currently calling, but not really meaning, AI. So there you go. That's so far that's what I found. Maybe once we get past the point where we're creating ugly art, we'll have something there. But the ugly art market, all the ugly artists, not ugly artists, but artists who make ugly, forget it. The whole point is it doesn't really create very good stuff. And even if it does, you still have to go in and fix it, check it and fix it. Well, what's the point of that? I could have just done it from the beginning. Made that happen. Let's see if we got anything else I need to focus on. We got 2 minutes to go. 2 minutes. This is not the live stream, really. This is not the actual event. This is me getting things together, or not together, as the case may be. It's sort of how things work. I've been playing around with AI. I've been trying to see, is it possible to create a certification training course out of an AI? And I am happy to say, no, it's not. And many times it's just giving me wrong stuff completely. It's not even accurate. It's not even good. So no, it's not worth the time. It's much, to me, the goal with doing these certification courses and the whole reason we're doing it the way we do it is to give you the most accurate and most exam ready material and the highest quality. I think that's the problem we have in this industry of training, is just the quality part. And as someone who's taken 20 different certification exams in this industry, it's frustrating because you never know if you're going to be able to find something that's good quality. Am I buying something that's really going to give me the value back? And I thought, well, how can we change that? And that's what we're starting on. And sadly, there's not a lot of other folks out there doing the same thing, unfortunately. Is the SY0601 expiring soon? It is. Well, I guess what depends on what soon means. If you mean the age of the universe, yeah, really soon. But generally speaking, in human terms, it's July of next year. So you almost have a year before it is retired. So no, not really soon. Because you can finish the exam studies in about 3 months on average. So what keyboard is this? This is a Logitech Ergo something. Ergo 680? Ergo something? Let's see if I have the Logitech app that I could bring up on my screen. I do. It's this one. It is this. This is the keyboard. And what does it say it is? I don't even know the model number. What it is, Ergo 860, an Ergo K860. Welcome to Logitech's Ergo K860. And it's a split keyboard type, as you can see here. You can't really see it on there, but that is the split keyboard. Look, it's a little one right there. And all of those keys across the top are programmable, or you can turn them off. They have this great key right here called the print screen key, which is, by the way, right next to the backspace key. That's my only problem with this keyboard, is they put, for some reason, a print screen key. But you'll notice I reprogrammed the print screen key so that if I push it, it doesn't do anything. So there you go. I'm already over time. Why am I talking about a keyboard? Let's do a live stream, everybody. It is Bluetooth. That's what I'm using right now is Bluetooth. It supports that Logitech dongle thing, but since it's Bluetooth, I don't use that. I'm already over time. Let's do a live stream, everybody. Enough of the chat, enough of the details here. Let's get things started. Here we go. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the September 2023 Professor Messer N10-008 Network Plus Study Group. This is the study group where I ask you questions that come from the CompTIA exam objectives, and hopefully somewhere in there you will be able to learn a little bit more about the content that is located in the CompTIA exam objectives. That is the point when doing a lot of these, that we want to make sure that everything that you're learning on these matches the exam objectives. What? You don't know what the exam objectives are? We'll talk about those in just a bit. If you are here live, we would love it if you joined us by visiting vevox.app and then using the ID 192-847-123. I'll put those up on the screen in just a moment. You could also just pop open a new browser window and make this easy by typing in professormesser.com/QA. Now, I have right now something on the screen that you can even check with. So once you connect, you'll be able to see what is available for you to see. This is a nice summary of folks that are checking in and where they might be located around the world. We got folks everywhere. Thanks for being here and on the live stream. We wouldn't be able to do these live streams without your participation. So this is fantastic. That's the Vevox app. We'll, of course, have that information on the screen whenever you need to answer a question. So we'll talk more about that in just a moment. I have for you, just to get started, if you were able to get into Vevox and you were able to see information on the screen, I have for you a question. And the question, this is one actually from last month. This is our only old question, if you will, that we'll talk about. The only rule that we have is you may not answer this online in the chat room. Please don't put any hints in the chat room. Instead, you want to answer this question on vevox.app. We'll show you how in just a moment. The question is, the internet connection to a distant site has failed. Which of the following would be the best way to remotely manage the router at this location? Would it be VPN, VDI, Secure Shell, RDP, or out-of-band connection? You got a few options to choose from. We're going to come back to this question in just a moment, so don't worry about answering or I guess not answering online. You want to answer with the vevox.app link, and there's the ID on your screen, 192-847-123. We'll come back to that question in just a moment. Well, thanks for being here. We do these live streams for Network Plus once a month, and we have other live streams that we do throughout the month for A+, Security Plus. Well, you can always come back and join any one of those. When we're not here, you can find us online. We have our Discord, our YouTube, our Instagram, our LinkedIn. All you have to do is type in professormesser.com/ the name of the service that you would like to find me on. And if you enjoyed this video, you might want to subscribe to our YouTube channel and maybe even give this one a thumbs up. You can find that at professormesser.com/YouTube. Also, we have daily A+ pop quiz questions, and those pop quiz questions are available at professormesser.com/Twitter and professormesser.com/Instagram. Let's talk about Network Plus. The current version of the Network Plus exam is the N10-008. This exam was released on September the 15th of 2021. So we are a couple years into this, which means we have about a year and a half before we would even see this retired, which makes it a retirement date, well, if I do the correct number here, March of 2025. So that is a very good way to think about your studies, you have until March 2 years from now, March and a half, a year and a half to make that happen. So you got plenty of time as we sit here in September of 2023 to study for the current version of the exam. The exam is 90 minutes long, a maximum of 90 questions, and you need to score a 720 out of a scale from 100 to 900. I know it's a little bit unusual, but those are the numbers. I don't make the numbers up. I just tell you what they are. In the exam itself, you will get a mixture of multiple choice questions and performance-based questions, and we will do both of those today. One of the things that I think is important is that you get a copy of the objectives. They are free, and they tell you everything you need to know to pass this exam. They are at professormesser.com/objectives, and follow the link over to the CompTIA website. Now, we've got other things that are going on behind the scenes, but of course, if you need other types of training materials, things like our course notes, maybe you want downloadable versions of our videos and our audio. Maybe you've got want to get preferred access to the Q&A that's here in our live streams. So a lot of different options are available. You can find out about our success bundles on our website at professormesser.com/netsuccess. So you've got a few things that you can sort of focus on. As we're going through this live stream today, I want to let you know that it will have a replay available immediately afterwards on YouTube. It's just a normal part of the YouTube process. But I also make an audio-only podcast distributed version. So you will find those at professormesser.com/podcast. If you have a podcast listening program, you can add us there. If you have a streaming service you like to use, like Spotify or Apple Podcasts or Google Podcasts, we're also on those. Just type in Professor Messer, and you'll find all of the videos that we do. I mentioned that there is a live the live stream has a replay available immediately afterwards on YouTube. And in about a day, you will see that almost like magic, these timestamps will suddenly appear in the YouTube video description, which allows you to jump directly to the information you're searching for. Those are put there thanks to my marketing manager, Lori. She's watching the replay of this. Hi, Lori. How's it going? Yeah. How's the fam? This is one of the things that really helps, I think, if you're trying to find a specific thing, and maybe it was somebody asked a question, but it was a couple of months ago and you don't remember the timestamp. You can find it very, very quickly simply by looking at the YouTube video description. Thank you, Lori. And if you like that, Lori's also watching the chat go by on the replay, so you're more than welcome to thank her in the chat if you've been able to take advantage of that. Always nice to know if the things we're doing are making a difference in your studies. Also let you know that when we're not here live, we are on Discord. Go to professormesser.com/Discord, and you can certainly join us. We have a great community there of people that are studying for their A+, their Network+, their Security+, and other certifications. They do live streams all the time. People will just open up and have a live study session randomly. So occasionally you want to step in there, see what's going on. You can find it all and join us at professormesser.com/Discord. So you have plenty to do. And of course, I'm in there too. If you have questions or need to get my attention about something, that's one way to do it. You can also go to the website and click the Contact Us link if you ever need to contact me. That Contact Us, it should just say Contact Me, because that's pretty much what that does. Also let you know, eventually you're going to need to take this Network Plus exam. That's going to be an important one. But you have to, of course, pay for the exam. Now, you could go to the CompTIA website and pay full price, but why would you do that when I have discounted vouchers available on my website if you happen to live in the U.S., Canada, or a U.S. territory? These are already discounted. You don't need a coupon code. You don't need a discount code. You don't have to add an extension to your browser. You simply visit the web page and it's already discounted. I even tell you how much it is discounted on the page from the CompTIA site. So you'll know exactly what your savings will be, and they're available for any of the CompTIA exams. Not only do you get the voucher at a discounted rate, I even give you some extra things. So you get a copy of my exam hacks book. This is a list of tips and tricks that I put together through the years of taking all these different certification exams. And there's things that can help you for your studies, also things that can help you during the exam. You might be able to get more points on your exam by following some of these tips that I have in my exam hacks book. And when you buy the voucher from my site, you get the exam hacks book for free. It's actually not sold. You can't buy the exam hacks book. It is only available if you purchase a voucher or if you purchase a success bundle. That's the only way you get your hands on the Exam Hacks book. Find out more about that. Visit professormesser.com/vouchers. Let's talk about that question that I asked earlier. The internet connection to a distant site has failed. Which of the following would be the best way to remotely manage the router at this location? Would it be VPN, VDI, secure shell, RDP, or out-of-band connection? And let's see how you did. I'm going to stop the polling, and we'll see what you think the answer was. This was a rewind question from last month, and indeed, many of you did get this one right. I think we got a better number than we did last month because out-of-band connection, which is the right answer, got 48%. We'll round it up. 48% of the votes. We also have secure shell did 24%. RDP was 14.5%. VDI was 4%. VPN was 9%. So we still had a quarter of you that said secure shell was how you do this. The problem, of course, is that this connection has failed. We don't have a way to directly connect to this device. So we need some way to connect. The internet's down. The connection to that link is not available. So you can always find out more by checking my video on remote access. It's section 4.4 of the N10-008, and I explain all about out-of-band connectivity, something we always have to plan for, especially if we're putting in a remote site. So you have a primary connection to that remote site, certainly, but you're also going to need to have some type of connection to get to that site if the network is down. We used to do this by dial-up. In fact, in some cases, we still use dial-up modems to be able to do this. Thankfully, that's becoming very, very rare, but in some locations, you just don't have a choice. Other locations, we might get an extra DSL line brought in or a cable modem, or we might use satellite. It depends on what's available, where we happen to be, whether it's in what country it happens to be in. There's lots of different variables, but having some type of backup system to be able to connect and manage these devices in the case of an outage can be critical, and an out-of-band management connection is what we were looking for there. And indeed, about 50% of you got that one. But that's why it would not be secure shell. If you don't have a connection to the device, secure shell isn't going to help you very much. So hopefully that's given you a perspective on some of the things that are important. If you want more details on this one, you can always go check out last month's video where I detailed every single one of the answers, explained why that was the case. And of course, that's what we do with all of the new questions in our live study groups. So you'll notice, and one of the things I mentioned earlier was that on the exam, you can get multiple choice-based questions. In fact, most of the exam is multiple choice-based questions, but there are a handful of questions you will get at the beginning of the exam that are not multiple choice. CompTIA calls them performance-based questions. In reality, they may be fill in the blank. They might put you at a command prompt and ask you to perform a particular function. They might give you a matching question. Maybe you have to put things in a certain order. Maybe it's a drag and drop question. There's lots of different ways to ask. But the important thing to remember is all of these questions, regardless of how they are asked, will be asking you information that comes from the exam objectives. So you can't go wrong. It really doesn't matter how they ask the question. As long as you know the material, you will be able to answer it. So I have for you, as I do with all of our study groups, the first new question of the study group is a performance-based question. And here is your performance-based question of the month. From the command line, identify all possible IP addresses for www.professormesser.com. That's it. That's the question. I don't have anything for you to choose from. There's no matching. There's nothing to fill in the blank with. I guess there's just the blank. You have to fill in everything and figure out what the answer would be. So from the command line, and this can be a command line in Windows, like the one we see here. It can be a command line in Linux. It can be a command line in Mac OS. As it turns out, it's the same answer. In fact, I can think of two answers here that I would accept. So I'll give you, that's the only hint I'll give you, is those two. Now, if you think you know the answer, you want to plug it in right there. We'll go to vevox.app, and there's your ID number there. You can always use that. So you've got some options on where you can put in that answer. And again, of course, please no answers in the chat room. Please no hints in the chat room. We're going to pretend we're in the actual exam. You can't talk to anyone else. You can't Google this. You can't Google this. You cannot Google. Do not Google. So that's the rules. We have to do this on our own. So from the command line, identify all possible IP addresses for www.professormesser.com. Maybe you know the answer on this one. It is a command line question, and there are quite a few command lines utilities you need to know for the Network Plus exam. There's a large number. So absolutely, you should maybe figure that out. And if you know the exact syntax, that would be ideal for you to put into the answer that you're putting in right now at vevox.app. Not a lot of people plugging this in quickly. Always look to see how quickly are the numbers moving up. And if they start moving up really quickly, I know a lot of people know that one. Or we think we know that one. Really, maybe sometimes we've all been fooled and have all chosen the wrong answer, or most of us. In this case, maybe you do know the answer on this one. So this would be good. Hopefully you're familiar with some of these commands. I think some of this would be incredibly useful to know if you sit down at a console or the command line and you're trying to find information like this. This does not require any apps installed. It does not require anything special to be included. It is in the operating system you install. I have yet to find an operating system where you cannot do this from the command line in the stock configuration. So hopefully that's given you an idea of what it might be. Let's see how you did with this one. The question again asks, from the command line, identify all possible IP addresses for www.professormesser.com. And if you went to the command line, you could have typed, as I mentioned earlier, two different commands. It could have been dig. In fact, the syntax for dig is dig space www.professormesser.com, and you get a big output of information. We'll talk about that in a moment. Or you could have used NSLOOKUP. That would have been a good one. NSLOOKUP space www.professormesser.com. Notice that the syntax is similar, but you will find, of course, that all of these provide the same output, just in a different way. So NSLOOKUP, for example, tells you that it is querying a server at Quad 9. That's the DNS server that I used for this particular system. Quad 9, if you haven't seen Quad 9, you can Google that one. It is a extremely useful DNS provider, and it's one that, oddly enough, uses 9.9.9.9 as the DNS server, so it's easy to remember. Very similar to the 1.1.1.1 that you might be using from Cloudflare. They make a 1.1.1.1 app to not only provide VPN capabilities, but also the DNS. And you can see the answers are that the website www.professormesser.com, or the device, has 3 different IP addresses. Wait a second, what's going on there? So you've got 104.22.72.108. You got 104.22.73.108. And you have 172.67.41.114, which interestingly enough is identical to the dig output over here, which tells us here's the command you've asked, here is the information that was gathered, and here are the results, the answer section. And you can see the IP addresses on the answer section, identical. It's the same as what we got with NSLOOKUP, which makes sense because it is the same server that we're accessing. It's Quad 9 that we were pulling this from. In fact, it tells you that the query took 674 milliseconds, which seems like a long time. The server is indeed Quad 9 on port 53. What's port 53 again? Oh, it's DNS. That's right. That's how that works. And then you've got the time frame this was done. I just did this earlier as I was putting together this live stream. So this is exactly what you would use to find out. The key in this question, by the way, was asking all possible IP addresses. So when you connect to this and you ask and you query for www.professormesser.com, your answers could be very different than what I got. In fact, if you want to try it at the command line, pop open a command line, type it in, try it yourself, and try NSLOOKUP, which is the one that normally is just included with your operating system. The NSLOOKUP command should show you a series of IP addresses, and it will be different depending on where you are in the world, and it might be different depending on how the DNS is set up to provide these to you. And this is really so that I can have redundancy. You could connect to different IP addresses to still get back to my website. That is by design. Which one are you using? It depends on where you are. It depends on a lot of different variables, but from my perspective, I just want to be sure that you always have a way to get to my website. And this is yet another way to do this. If you were to perform a whois a function. Sometimes you can find a website that can, especially for domain registrars, they will give you a whois option, and you can type in those IP addresses, and it will tell you who owns those IP addresses. And I'll take you right to the answer. It's Cloudflare. So I have Cloudflare in front of my web servers to help protect them. It's another security instance. We have layered security. Security is extremely important for me. So we layer the security many different ways, and Cloudflare is just one of those that we use. So your answer here was NSLookup. Now the question, some people are asking, wait, there's other ways to get an IP address. What if we just did a ping space www.professormesser.com? If you did that, you would be able to ping that address. It would return an address because the ping command would have to go out and perform the same NSLookup that we're doing here and receive an IP address and then ping that IP address. But it's only going to ping the first one you got back. But the question asked, from the command line, identify all possible IP addresses for professormesser.com. See, I was already thinking ahead on that one. That doesn't happen often, but I did think ahead on that one because I thought, what other ways can we make this work? In fact, I think I probably have to go back to the question and add in, I think it probably said from the command line, identify the IP address of. And I thought, wait, I could do that with other programs. So how can we make it more specific to those? And that's why. So you're right. You could get one IP address by using the ping command, and that would work for the one, but that wasn't the question. The question asked, what are all of the possibilities for IP addresses for that particular server? There was another question in the chat room where someone asked, what if we searched for just professormesser.com? Well, interestingly enough, professormesser.com as a fully qualified domain name is a different name than www.professormesser.com. Those are two different devices, even though it seems like that's the same name. And in fact, if you go to your browser and type in professormesser.com, it redirects you over to www.professormesser.com because that's the way I set it up. But what's interesting about that is the process of doing that by going out and having some third-party utility make this happen can be challenging. The only way you're going to get everything on the screen, the only way you'll get a complete view of what that DNS server has is to go to the NSLookup or dig and perform it that way, or some other front end that allows you to do it. So that is why, in this case, the correct answer is NSLookup, or the correct answer is dig. I'll accept either one of those as a correct answer. There's just the other options don't provide you with all of the other IP addresses. That is really the only difference between all of those. And sometimes it is round robin, sometimes it isn't. It depends on the DNS configuration of what's there. But if you are at all trying to figure it out, it's from our NSLookup and dig. I guess that was it right there. From section 5.3 videos, name is command line tools. All the command lines you need to know are in that one video. In fact, it will explain to you that if you're in Windows and trying to use dig, you'll notice dig doesn't work. And you're wondering, why is that? And I explained that in there. In fact, I have a separate video, and I think it's on the YouTube video description of this video. If it isn't, Lori, make sure we stick it on there, where I have a video on how to install dig. I think it's in Windows 10, but it works the same in Windows 11. So if you really, really want dig in Windows, you can do that. I'll tell you exactly how to make that happen in that video. And so if you have other questions, we can break those down. That is the correct answer. You guys did a great job with that one. That is your performance-based question of the month. Hopefully you learned a little something about dig or a little something about NSLookup. DNS is really where all the outages happen, quite honestly. So make sure you're very familiar with DNS. Well, it sure seems that way anyhow. It's always DNS. Why is it always DNS? Let's shift gears now back to a multiple choice question. This question asks, a security administrator needs to allow logs from all network devices to traverse the firewall. Which of the following ports should be opened? Would it be, here we go, TCP 22, UDP 514, TCP 1433, TCP 25, or TCP 3389? There you go. You've got 5 different options there to choose from. The question again asks, a security administrator needs to allow logs from all network devices to traverse the firewall. Which of the following ports should be opened? TCP/22, UDP/514, TCP/1433, TCP/25, or TCP/3389. Oh, okay. With my tongue untangled, maybe you can figure out which ones this should be. And if you think you know the answer, please know answers in the chat room. You want to go to professormesser.com/QA or follow the links on your screen at vevox.app to plug in what you think the right answer might be. A lot of people putting them in right now, trying to figure out the details of what this one happens to be. And you can always guess. In fact, you should always guess. You should never leave a question blank for those. Port numbers are definitely a lot of port numbers on A+, a lot of port numbers on Network Plus, 0 port numbers on Security Plus. What? There's none. There's none in the Security Plus exam objectives. In fact, the 701, we don't want to talk about the 701 yet, which is not out yet, but you can download the exam objectives now and look for yourself. So there, you've got some options on what you might use for these. A lot of people have already plugged in their answers. We have a lot of folks that are locked in on this one. So I'm really curious to know what we answered. So let's see how we did. The question again asks, a security administrator needs to allow logs from all network devices to traverse the firewall. Which of the following ports should be opened? Should you open TCP/22, UDP/514, TCP/1433, TCP/25, or TCP/3389? How did you do? Let's see. We'll stop the polling, and you can see that UDP/514 is 47% of the answers. That's what many people selected. We also have 16% said TCP/1433, 14% said TCP/22, 12% said TCP/25, and finally, single digits say TCP/3389. That's a pretty good distribution, although clearly UDP/514 sort of won that particular race right here. But I wonder, are we right with UDP/514? Well, the real question, this is sort of a two-step question. The real question is, what are we doing here? Well, we're transferring logs between a network device and probably some other log aggregation service, but the logs need to go through. Well, there's a standard format that we use on our networks to transfer logs from one device to another, and that is aptly named syslog. And if you look into the port numbers used by syslog, it is indeed UDP/514. That is what we use by default with syslog. So that's the key with this one. And it's usually going to some type of centralized log aggregation tool, usually a SIEM, that is a security information and events manager, usually a piece of software that's running on a big server with lots of drive space, lots of storage, so that we can keep terabytes and terabytes and terabytes of information and be able to not just search through the logs easily, but can sort of correlate data together. You can start piecing together different parts of it. So very useful utility, very useful protocol to use in your environment. And if you start setting up a SIEM, get ready to use some disk space. You're going to use up a lot of disk space with this one. So hopefully that's given you some perspective on what this particular one is. Maybe if you are familiar with some of these other port numbers and what you would be using, you've got lots of options available here. Whenever you start looking at port numbers, it can be challenging to make that happen. So hopefully this is a set of port numbers you're familiar with. TCP/22, of course, is SSH. That is your secure shell. You got TCP/1433 for your SQL server. You have TCP/25 if you're doing any mail, you're probably using that one, and TCP/3389 for remote desktop. So you've got options here to choose from. In this particular case, it just being UDP helps you remember. There's not too many UDP protocols you need to know, so maybe that helps you remember what that port number is. But this could have easily been a TCP protocol as well. It could have used something else, but syslog tends to use UDP. So if you see that on your network, that's probably what it's running, is that one. You guys did great with that one. Almost 48% of you got that one absolutely right. So you've been studying up on your port numbers. So good for you. That can sometimes be problematic. Of course, that's just a small section of the exam. So I always tell people don't spend days of your time studying nothing but port numbers. After a while, you start to remember them, though. So that may be a good one for flashcards. The answer, again, UDP 514 is the correct answer for syslog, which is exactly what we were doing with this question. More questions. I have another one for you. Let's do another one. This one is a question that asks, a network administrator uses a routing protocol which selects the best route based on the number of hops to a destination. Which of the following would best describe this protocol? Is it link state, BGP, static, hybrid, or distance vector? It's got to be one of these, right? Those are all real things. It must be one of these. A network administrator uses a routing protocol which selects the best route based on the number of hops to a destination. Which of the following would best describe this protocol? Is it link state, BGP, static, hybrid, or distance vector? If you think you know the answer, follow the links on your screen. You can pop open a new browser window and visit professormesser.com/QA or use the Vevox app details that are there on the left side of your screen to answer this one. I wonder how we're doing. A lot of numbers going up very quickly on this one. Again, I'm watching, but I don't know what you chose. I don't look at the answers until I hit the button. It's more fun for me if I do it that way. I could peek over there. I could go see what's going on, but that's not fun. So we have to see how this works out when you start piecing these together and what you think it might be. The question again asks, a network administrator uses a routing protocol which selects the best route based on the number of hops to a destination. Which of the following would best describe this protocol? Is it link state, BGP, static, hybrid, or distance vector? And what did you answer? We're freezing this, and you can see that 66.67, 2/3 of you exactly, have chosen distance vector. We have 21% that say BGP, 9% say link state, and then you have about 1% apiece for static or hybrid. So it wasn't either one of those. Distance vector, Victor, seemed to be the one that most people chose. And if I was going to choose one, that's what I would choose as well. I would choose distance vector. And that's because these types of protocols have a very simple metric that helps them determine how close or how far away a site may be, and it's all based on number of hops. So the hops is the distance. Now, does it really mean that a hop of 5 hops is closer than 6 hops? Not necessarily, because this doesn't take into account in many cases how much traffic can traverse that hop. Is it a slow bandwidth link or is it a high bandwidth link? Is it physically closer at 6 hops than it is at 5? That's entirely possible as well. So hops is just describing how many routers do you have to hop through to get to that final destination. And it doesn't take into account distance. It doesn't take into account bandwidth. It doesn't take into account quality of service. Doesn't take into account really anything in most cases. Some protocols can do a hybrid where they might be primarily distance vector based, but might also be interpreting other types of metrics as well and putting them all together. So in our particular case, you usually see something like RIP, which is the routing information protocol. Probably more modern networks will probably be running EIGRP, which is generally associated with Cisco devices, but is not exclusive to those. EIGRP is the Enhanced Interior Gateway Routing Protocol, also another one that does distance vector determination when figuring out where to go. Really, it's just a better version of RIP, is what effectively it is. Don't tell the Cisco people I said that. I look forward to your cards and letters. That is the right answer, distance vector. And in fact, 2/3 of you knew that was the right answer. You were spot on, correct, absolutely. That is the right answer. That's what we were looking for. BGP is a routing protocol itself, but BGP does not exclusively use number of hops to make its determination. It commonly uses many different variables, but it does not use number of hops exclusively. In fact, when we talk about best, we're really looking for all of those, figuring out what it is. Link state, only 9% of you chose link state. That implies if the link is available, then that link state means we can send traffic to that site. There's a little bit more to it than that, of course, but that gets you going on the links. Static means that you set these manually. This is making a determination based on number of hops. Static routing, you're making a determination which way to go based on a particular destination. So that's one of those that works that way. And then hybrid, as I mentioned earlier, kind of a combination of these. It's difficult to put anything solely in a hybrid category because even EIGRP uses some features that you could kind of send it over to hybrid, but really EIGRP is distance vector. Well, we're not going to fight about how you want to call it, what you want to call it. There are very clear delineations in the exam objectives. Make sure you're familiar with those. That should give you an idea of where at least most people come down on what protocols should fit under what category. So keep that in mind as you go through your studies and make sure that you sync up with those exam objectives. If you answered distance vector, you got this one absolutely right. Congratulations. That's the answer that we were looking for. Already we've seen in this whole stories of routing and network ports and doing things at the command line. There's so much more in here as well. The entire Network Plus course that I've created is 93 videos, over 14 hours of content. And that is a tight 14 hours. We don't have a lot of playtime in there. There's not a lot of slack in my videos, as you've probably seen. We get right to the point. We tell you what you need to know. We end the video. There's not a lot of, hi, how are you? My name is James, and here's what we're doing today. We don't do that. It's the Professor Messer Show, and there's no music playing, and we just stick to the details. So that's a lot of content in 93 videos in 14 hours. Everything, subnetting, protocols, cabling, fiber, encryption, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. It's all in there. And of course, I would love it if everybody was watching all of these videos and finding ways, or at least finding the right information they needed from those videos. But of course, not everybody has time. You may want to consider getting my course notes. My course notes are a document, a PDF, or a physical book that has everything from every video in one place. So all of the text, all of the important charts, all of the important graphics that I've created, everything is in these course notes. They are extensive in how much information is there. This is the PDF version, but of course, we also have the physical version, which of course is identical to what you get in the PDF. Let's see if I can find. So here's the page with all the different ports on it and the things that you would be using. Let's see, do I have that port page? There it is. So it's sort of, I'm in the way of most of this, but the same details are in here. So this page here, there you go. Can't even see it. That's the page that's on the right side of the screen. It's a little different because of the PDF and the way it's formatted, but it's exactly the same content with exactly the same pages. In fact, it's the PDF that sort of creates the physical version. If you want to go behind the scenes and how we make all of that happen. These can be very useful if you've already gone through the videos. Of course, they're not designed to replace the videos or any of your other studies, but it is a great way to figure out what's going on. And for those of you getting the physical version, the folks here in Madison County appreciate you very much because we have a huge industry in logging where I happen to live. So we are happy to build more trees for you. If you think a physical book is the right way to go, it is also environmentally safe because we just make as many as we need. We aren't running out of paper. We are not running out of wood. We just plant more trees. And it works great. So that's another way to approach this. If you'd also like to support what we do here at the website, this is also a great way to do it. And you get something in return. So that's a win-win. Find out more at my website. Go to professormesser.com/NPCN. Stands for Network Plus Course Notes. And you can, of course, use that to find that, or use the links at the top of the page under Network Plus, and you'll find the course notes listed there as well. And thank you so much for your support with that. It really does make a difference for what we're doing here. It keeps those lights on, and we sure appreciate it. Let's do some more questions. Next one on our list is this question that asks, an organization is documenting the proper and improper use of company assets. Where should this information be referenced? Should it be EULA, AUP, BYOD, DLP, or DNS? There's a lot of letters there. The question again asks, an organization is documenting the proper and improper use of company assets. Where should this information be referenced? Would it be EULA, AUP, BYOD, DLP, or DNS? One of those abbreviations is the right one. If you think you know the answer, please don't answer in the chat room. You want to go to professormesser.com/QA or follow the links on your screen to vevox.app and lock in your answer. This is one, I think we should know this one pretty well. The numbers are going up quick. That's how I know. So do we really know it? Do we not know? It's got to be one of these. So we'll have to see if that works in all of these. Security is a part of the Network Plus exam. And of course, I'll explain to you in a moment where this comes from in the exam objectives, just so you know it really is a Network Plus question. Of course, there are security questions on the A+. There's security questions on Network Plus. There's obviously security questions on Security Plus. There's always a little bit of overlap, but it's pretty minor between these. Maybe less than 10%. It's somewhere around there, generally speaking. So don't think you can study for the A+ and then walk into the Network Plus exam, and that will not work for you. You have to start here and go through the views of learning all of the rest of the Network Plus details. So let's see if you did learn the Network Plus details. The question again asks, an organization is documenting the proper and improper use of company assets. Where should this information be referenced? Should it be the EULA, AUP, BYOD, DLP, or DNS? These are all real things, by the way. I didn't just make them up. Sounds like I made them up. Nope, they're all real things. We'll talk about them in just a moment. 64% of you say the answer is AUP. That's a pretty strong number. But 23% of you say the answer is EULA. Is this one of those places where we might have switched? We'll find out. 7% say it's DLP, 5% say it's BYOD, and only less than 1% say the answer is DNS. And good for you, because we already had a DNS question. And if you were paying attention, you know that it couldn't have been DNS for this one. The answer, 64% of you believe that it's AUP, and that's what I believe it is as well. AUP stands for Acceptable Use Policies. These are policies that are documented commonly in your employee handbook, and they might also be in a separate rules of behavior guide. So you never know exactly where they might go. Everywhere I've worked, they've been in the employee handbook. They've just been an addendum that's in the same employee handbook. And you sign a document that says, I read the employee handbook and I will comply with everything that's in there, or you can throw me out of my ear. And that's pretty much every employee handbook. I think I've probably had to sign off on 6 or 7 employee handbooks in my career. They're all pretty much the same. If you don't follow these directions, we will toss you outside into the parking lot and take your shoes. I don't think they say that, but it could happen. AUP is acceptable use policy. So it tells you, here's a phone that we're giving to you, or we're connecting your phone to the corporate network. Here's what you can do on your phone, and here's what you can't do on your phone. And so they can set policies out of those. That way, if, let's say, in a purely made up scenario that absolutely never happened to me, and I would never say things like that out of line, that you're suddenly monitoring the network with a next generation firewall, and you notice there's a user at a remote site who tends to be visiting websites that are clearly inappropriate and are very, shall we say, niche in the type of sites that this person is visiting. And now you've got this scenario that we believe that this person is perhaps surfing things on their phone that perhaps they should not be doing during work hours, and certainly should not be doing over the work network. And therefore, what do we do? Well, if you don't have an acceptable use policy and nobody agreed to this, it makes it much more difficult to perform some type of legal reason for getting rid of this person, for saying, oh, you did something you shouldn't have done. We now take your shoes and put you outside. Well, that's not something that helps. The person who's there says, you never told me that was bad. Turns into a Seinfeld scenario. Wow, was that bad? Should I have not done that? Was that? So they do have some type of pushback on that if you didn't tell them. That's one of the problems. So we have to tell people, don't do that. Now, the same thing might apply for other types. I have been on networks where people have been doing things that were not just inappropriate, but were actually illegal, and they did go to prison. They went to federal prison for doing things on a network. This does happen, and it's one of the things we talk about in our Network Plus course about how you do have to have some level of visibility and knowledge of how do you handle these things from a legal perspective. In that particular case, if it's just illegal, you don't really need to put that in the AUP. Everybody should know what the law is, and of course, ignorance of the law is no excuse. So you don't have to detail what types of things may be federally prevented you to have doing. And to do them at work seems unusual, but that's the way things go. It's some people don't make good decisions, and that's certainly one of those cases. But the AUP can get you, make sure that all your users know about everything else. Well, you didn't tell me what the good and bad ways are to use my phone. You didn't tell me what I could and could not do on my laptop. You didn't tell me what I could or could not do on my mobile phone. And so at least now you have documentation of how that works. AUP is the right answer. 64% of you got that one spot on. That is the right answer. That's what we were looking for. And hopefully that's given you some perspective. Now, 23% of you said EULA was the right answer. EULA is an end user license agreement. And employees in your organization are not licensed, or you're not licensing them to do something. This EULA is something that usually pops up when you're installing a new version of software. As you're installing the software, it pops open this multi-paragraph, very long document that nobody reads, and they just either scroll the bottom and click OK, or they just click OK if they're able to do that. So a lot of people will simply click OK through the EULA. But the EULA is defining how someone is licensed to use a particular piece of software, which of course is important. But in the case of this question, we're trying to explain to people the proper and improper ways to act as professional people. So that's what that's about. Hopefully that gives you some perspective on the things you would deal with. Maybe that is, or maybe that isn't too much, but we'll see if that fits what I bet. If you have a job right now, go look at your employee handbook. You know, the one that said you already read it and you signed that you read it. Now go read it. You'll be surprised in some cases what's in there. BYOD means bring your own device. This is a case where you bring in your personal phone into the office, and then they will segment it logically inside the phone so that your personal information stays personal, and then the corporate data is in the other part of the phone. This also means that if you leave the organization, they can delete their part of the phone and leave all of your content in one place. So it's not a bad idea to do something like that. And then you've got DLP. Data loss prevention is what this DLP means in this particular context. Data loss prevention is a way to prevent traffic from traversing the network when that traffic contains sensitive information. So if you don't want people transferring credit card numbers across the network, you can configure your DLP to block that traffic from being sent. If you are trying to stop people from putting social security numbers into an email, you can block that with a DLP. DLPs are very useful for doing that. In many cases, they're useful for informing you that someone is doing it. Because I think in most places you're encrypting, you have the right security in place. But I have been, well, I should say, this is not a real story. It's one I'm simply making up for this scenario. But let's say it's a manufacturing company, and the manufacturing company was transferring customer data across the internet to one of their remote sites in the clear in a spreadsheet, and it contained all of the orders for the day, including everyone's credit card numbers and their codes to be able to verify, and the expiration IDs. So they were just sending everything over the network in the clear. And in this theoretical scenario, they were able to see that on their firewall and able to block it using the DLP function of their firewall. So sometimes that can be handy. And lastly, DNS, we know this from our earlier performance-based question. That is the domain name system. That's how we can resolve a fully qualified domain name into an IP address or vice versa, and a lot more other things in our DNS. In this case, the only thing that really fits is the AUP. 64% of you got that one absolutely right. Well done. We have time for more, so let's do some more. I have another multiple choice question for you, and this question asks, which of the following would be commonly found in a vulnerability database? Which of the following would be commonly found in a vulnerability database? Would it be public key, MX, SSO, CVE, VLAN ID. Which of the following would be commonly found in a vulnerability database? Would it be public key, MX, SSO, CVE, or VLAN ID? If you think you know the answer, please don't answer in the chat room. Instead, follow the links on your screen, professormesser.com/QA, or follow the Vevox app link on the left side of your screen to lock in this particular question. Do we know which of these would be commonly found in a vulnerability database? I got a lot of syllables in this question. This is the one really helping me. What this would commonly have inside of it. Yeah, I really wasn't thinking ahead after Patch Tuesday. For those of you that handle patches, you know what day it is. It's the day after Patch Tuesday. It's test day. We're now testing all the patches. Maybe we've done that already. Maybe you've got a system that tests them that same day. You're pushing them out today. You're deploying these patches. They're already on your systems because you're super efficient. Not everybody is as efficient as you. I will tell you, the bigger the organization, the harder it is to make that happen. It's just a problem with physics. It's has nothing to do with people being able to be knowledgeable in how to do it. It's more about how many applications you have to test, how many systems you have to test, how many operating systems you have to test. It can be a large testing scenario. You don't want to push a patch out and find out that patch breaks your primary app for the company. You'll go out of business instantly. So you don't want to be that person. And I'm sure the MGM people are not on the call today either. They're probably busy. We'll find out more about that. Maybe we'll have more to talk about the Security Plus study group next week regarding that incident. They're not having a good day either. I'm sure their network teams are exhausted at this point. So I send them my good vibes. Let's see if you were able to answer this one. The question asks, which of the following would be commonly found in a vulnerability database? Is it public key, MX, SSO, CVE, or VLAN ID? What is the answer? The answer is, let's see, or what you chose as the answer is 59% say the answer CVE. 24% of you say public key, and then it's down to single digits. 8% say SSO, 5% say VLAN ID, and 1% says MX. So there's your concern regarding what these might be. Obviously, 60% is a pretty big number, but so is the quarter of you that said public key. Vulnerability databases themselves are valuable because if you want to see what's happening with vulnerabilities for an app, or you need some heads up that an app you're using has a vulnerability that you now need to patch, you will probably find it in a feed coming from a vulnerability database. This is usually containing what is known as a set of numbers and letters that allows you to identify globally a specific vulnerability. So think of this as a unique identifier that everybody in the world can use to be able to name what that vulnerability happens to be. This makes it very easy to have conversations with people about the vulnerability. We refer to that special international name and number associated with this vulnerability as Common Vulnerabilities and Exposures Number, a CVE number. And that's what we were looking for in this case. It is really a community managed list, because you'll find these CVE numbers listed in many different places. And that's by design to make that happen. So this is a very useful tool to have, because very often you have to document what you're doing. You have to look at patches that are being sent to you. And usually the patches you received, speaking of Patch Tuesday of yesterday, when you receive these patches, it says this patch is to cover vulnerability CVE 2023 and then the number. So you know what number has been assigned to that. And you can reference that back in the vulnerability database and get more information about the vulnerability. Now, what's interesting, and other people have even mentioned this in chat room, isn't this a bad idea to document all of the vulnerabilities that we find in one place? This would be a delight for an attacker, because they could just find these vulnerabilities and go after them. Well, it's not quite that easy for the attacker. First, the things that we put in and create a CVE for are things that have already gone through the process of getting fixed. So generally speaking, once you see it listed as a CVE, the researcher has already been in touch with the manufacturer. The manufacturer, in most cases, has already created a patch or some type of mitigation, and they have already made those patches available on their site. So by the time you see it here, it's probably already has a patch available. You may have already even installed the patch and not even realized it. So that's another thing. You don't have to worry about that so much with the bad guys. And another thing about the CVEs is they don't tell you how to exploit the vulnerability. They just tell you that the vulnerability exists. And then it would be up to the attacker to have the skills involved to be able to somehow reverse engineer how to get into that. But it's interesting that they're very careful not to tell you how to exploit it. Now, to be fair, certain exploits are obvious how it would work. And in those cases, you really have to patch quickly and make those happen. So I think that really does help if you're really working on trying to figure out the details of how could I get into this? Most of the time you have no idea. It's not going to be part of the vulnerability database. If you want to see what they look like, here's an image of the vulnerability database. The main screen that's on NIST shows you this is the National Vulnerability Database. You can see how many CVs have been received and processed over a certain time frame. For an individual month, you can see this on this particular screenshot I got, the previous month was over 1,500 vulnerabilities were identified. So you just never know what these might be. If you drill down into them, they'll show you the details. So here's one. This is a CVE from the year 2020. The number is 1472, and you can see everything that you need to know about this. And it explains what this vulnerability is, what the severity happens to be. You've got other details to go through. So hopefully that's helpful too. This has some useful information in it. So hopefully you're familiar with these vulnerability databases. They can help keep you up to date on where the latest vulnerabilities might be. And there can be some important things in here. You don't want to miss a vulnerability that's for something you're using, because that puts your entire organization at risk. So hopefully that will give you some perspective. It is CVE. 60% of you chose that one. That is the right answer. 24% of you said public key. Public keys are obviously one half of the public key private key pair. And we commonly use that for asymmetric encryption or methods that can take advantage of that public key infrastructure, is what we refer to these as. In this case, we don't commonly see public keys put into a vulnerability database. In fact, we just saw a screenshot of a vulnerability database entry, and there's no public keys in there. We don't commonly keep those. What would they even be used for in most cases? So nope, that's not going to help us. Not commonly part of a vulnerability database. So hopefully that gives you a perspective. We have 8% that said SSO. SSO stands for single sign-on. In this case, single sign-on really has no reference, no match to a vulnerability database. So that's not going to help you to find information. We don't have single sign-ons in a vulnerability database. VLAN IDs are used to logically segment switches into separate VLANs. And in this case, VLAN IDs are not found in a vulnerability database either. They have nothing to do with vulnerabilities in most cases, I would imagine. I'm not aware of any VLAN ID related vulnerabilities. There's got to be one, because there's a vulnerability for everything. And then MX is a type of DNS record. Mail exchange is what that stands for. And the mail exchange records are also not found in a vulnerability database. They're found on a DNS server, which means the only option here, the one that makes the most sense, is indeed CVE. Really about 60% of you, just under, chose that one as the right answer, and you'd be absolutely correct. If you want more information on these, we can go back to the details here. It's from our N10-008 section 4.1, and the video name is Security Concepts. So that can help you find the information you're looking for regarding this particular question. So let's do some more. We've got other things to look at. I have another question. I know we're at the top of the hour, but we're going to keep pushing here. Oh, by the way, if you are watching this video for continuing education unit credit, I would love to give you a 1-hour webinar category CEU just for watching. Now, if you have no idea what a CEU is, then this probably doesn't apply to you. But if you already have one of your certifications and you would like to earn a CEU. Maybe that's how you're renewing. Not everybody does, but if you are, I would be glad to send it to you at an email. All you have to do is follow these instructions because these are part of the redemption process. You go to the top or the bottom of the Professor Messer website. You click the Contact Us link, and in that Contact Us link, put your name, your email address. In the subject line, put September 2023, and in the body of the message on a line by itself, put the super secret code word of the month, CVE. It's even circled for you right there. CVE is the super secret code word of the month. And so I'll be glad to, once I receive those, to look through them. Usually it takes me about a week. Then I'll turn these around and get them back to you, probably on the weekend when I'm sitting there trying to figure out, what do we do next? Oh, we need to send CVEs. And that's when they usually happen. So hopefully that helps too. So again, the way that you earn that CVE or earn the details you need for the certification renewal, then you can go to the ProfessorMesser.com website, click the Contact Us link, put in your name, your email address, and the subject line, put September 2023. And in the body of the message on a line by itself, put the super secret code word CVE to earn your CEU. There you go. I got both of them in there at the end. I think that was useful. Let's do some more questions. I know we're at the top of the hour. We're going to do one more question, though. Here we go. The question asks, an organization uses multicast to publish real-time camera video. Which of the following would provide the most efficient transfer of this data? Would it be port tagging, STP, BGP, DHCP relay, or IGMP snooping? All real things. I didn't make these up. Those are real things. An organization uses multicast to publish real-time camera video. Which of the following would provide the most efficient transfer of this data? Is it port tagging, STP, BGP, DHCP relay, or IGMP snooping? If you think you know the answer, put the link up. Go to ProfessorMesser.com/QA to lock in your answer, or use the links on your screen at Vevox.app. See if you know what the answer is. Now, when we're done with this, we're going to do an after show where I answer questions that you submit. You'll notice in your Vevox front end that there's tabs across the top. You can tab over and put in any questions that you would like to ask of me in that second hour, and you can really do that at any time. Probably should have been good if I'd mentioned that earlier, wouldn't it? We'll have to put that into the mix later on. We'll figure out the details. Vevox is relatively new for us here. We've only been using it for a couple months, so I have to kind of think about that earlier on because I forget. You can submit your questions at any time, which is really, really convenient. Used to be you'd have to hold them and wait, but now you can just stick them in there, and then we know it's coming through. A lot of you have already answered this one, but I have a feeling not quite as fast as the others. So now I'm curious, is this one where we really had to think about it? Maybe we've got the right answer, maybe we don't. We'll find out in a moment. Let's see how you answer. The question again asks, an organization uses multicast to publish real-time camera video. Which of the following would provide the most efficient transfer of this data? Is it port tagging, STP, BGP, DHCP relay, or IGMP snooping? What did you choose? I'm dying to know. And we can see the answer is 30% say port tagging, 20% say IGMP snooping, 20% say STP, almost 20% say DHCP relay, and then 10% say BGP. The answer is we don't know. We think we know. Well, if we go with 30%, I think that's a clear leader in our list. 30% said port tagging. You can see that we sort of have a tie between STP and IGMP snooping and DHCP relay. Kind of a three-way tie in that particular case. And then you've got BGP with 10.48%. So port tagging was not a majority, but a plurality of you chose port tagging as the right answer. And the answer is IGMP snooping. IGMP stands for the Internet Group Management Protocol. And this is one where you can use IGMP to help publish and connect to different multicast transmissions. So this is something you would configure in your switch, and you would turn on IGMP snooping. And once that's on, it's going to be looking for multicast traffic. And as we said in the question, this traffic is multicast. So obviously, I even put that it was real-time camera traffic. If you have cameras that are in your home or office, you probably have some level of multicast going on with those cameras. So IGMP snooping can help make your switch more efficient so that you aren't sending these multicasts to everyone all the time. Your switch can be intelligent enough to send the multicast traffic to only those devices that need to receive it, therefore making the entire infrastructure a lot more efficient and not using as much bandwidth as you normally would be. There's probably a configuration in your device that has IGMP snooping. This is one from one of the Cisco switches that I have that gives information on IGMP snooping. Was this one even turned on? On my switch, it is not. In fact, I probably could have made things much more efficient with my surveillance network if I had done that. In reality, I took all of the cameras that were on my surveillance network and I put them in their own VLAN. That was another way to do it. But that wasn't part of the question. In fact, that wasn't one of the answers. Let's look at those answers again and see what we did, because you can see that port tagging was really the winner. 30% said port tagging. When would you use port tagging? You would use port tagging if you needed to send something in a VLAN across a link to another switch that has the same VLANs configured in it, so that you can keep it on that VLAN as it moves from switch to switch. That's what we would do with port tagging. We tag the traffic with the VLAN info. It's sent across the network. The tag is ripped off and the switch looks at it and goes, oh, you come from VLAN 7? I'll put you back on VLAN 7. That's what port tagging does. And the tag's pulled off like a t-shirt you just bought. It's just ripped off of there and you're stuck back on VLAN 7. That has nothing to do with multicast traffic being published in real time. In fact, there's no mention here of multiple switches. There's no mention of keeping things on their same VLAN. That has nothing to do with this. In fact, maybe it's one big switch. You wouldn't even use VLAN tagging. So that wouldn't be the case either. In this case, port tagging sounds good, which is why I put it at the top. But it is not the answer we were looking for. Indeed, port tagging has nothing to do with publishing multicast traffic. There are times when it can be incredibly efficient in sending all kinds of traffic, but has nothing to do with the topic in this particular question. Next on our list, IGMP snooping is number 2 at 20.95%. I'm going to take that 95%. We'll call it 21. IGMP snooping, obviously the correct answer. STP stands for Spanning Tree Protocol. 20% of you chose Spanning Tree Protocol, which Spanning Tree is a great protocol. It should be turned on all of your switches because it prevents the case of creating loops in the switch where you happen to plug the switch back into itself. That is a bad situation on a switched network. Unless you're running STP, Spanning Tree Protocol will recognize, whoops, you suddenly created a loop. Let's turn one of those off so that you don't bring the entire network down to its knees. How would I know that? Don't ask me. That's all we're going to talk about that one. And then we have 18% that said DHCP relay. DHCP relay is a way to put your DHCP server on a distant subnet, even though the DHCP traffic is broadcast. So the relay allows you to relay it off your local subnet and onto a different IP address in the network. And the DHCP relay is incredibly useful for that, so that you don't have to have a separate DHCP server on every individual VLAN or subnet ID. You can simply put centralized DHCP servers in the core of your network and have your local subnet relay that information into the core, and then it is relayed back to you using a DHCP relay, which has nothing to do with publishing multicast traffic. So that's why we didn't choose DHCP relay. And lastly is BGP. And if you recall from a previous question, we used BGP in one of those questions. BGP is a routing protocol, the Border Gateway Protocol. And BGP is nothing to do with publishing multicast, at least very little to do with it in the context of this question, because it has nothing to do with making a multicast traffic transfer more efficient. It is really IGMP snooping that can make that happen. If you've got it turned on your switch, your multicast will work so much better. That's why we made IGMP snooping, because we wanted multicast was creating huge amounts of CPU and efficiency problems, and issues with being able to see what was going on and people using up too much bandwidth, this makes your multicast so much better. Well, as you can tell, we're already at the top of the hour. We even did a little bit of overtime, but everything we went through today was all from the exam objectives. What? You don't have the objectives? You should go get these. They are so good. They will tell you everything you need to know to pass this exam. And that's probably one of the number one questions I get, which is, how do I know when I'm ready to take this exam? How do I know if I'm studying the right content? What content should I study? All of those questions are answered and more in the free exam objectives from the CompTIA website. You can either follow the link here that will give you a link over to the CompTIA website, or simply go to your favorite search engine, type in the words CompTIA exam objectives. It's one of those first links. It'll take you right to the page, and everything is in here. It's a fantastic resource. Make sure you get your hands on that. It should be the first thing you start studying from. It should be the last thing you use as a checklist before you plan to schedule your exam. A lot of great details in there, and all of my videos follow the same format, the same structure, and the same numbering scheme as the objectives, which makes all of my materials so much easy to find. So very easy to find what you're looking for. You just match them up, and they're in there. Find out more there at professormesser.com/objectives. Of course, we do one of these study groups every month. In September, we still have a Security Plus study group 1 week from today. It's not on this list because this is October right here. But our September ends up next week with a Security Plus study group. It's usually one of the biggest ones of the month. We'd love to have you come back for that one. It's also on Wednesday. It's also at 12 noon Eastern. You can find out more about that at professormesser.com/calendar, or look at the events channel in our Discord. Everything is always updated and synchronized across those. Sometimes I have to change these dates. So this is what the dates are today. So the next Network Plus study group is on October the 18th. All of these things can change. All of these things can be moved around. All of these things may not even be correct, but I don't know until something changes. But when it does change, I update this link immediately. So if you go to professormesser.com/calendar, you've got the most updated list of everything going on. The only person who knows more than what's in that list is me. And as soon as I know it, I put it in there. So you're good to go as long as you know that calendar link. Come on back on October the 18th, and we'll do another one of these Network Plus study groups. And of course, always have new questions to ask in every study group. Well, we went through an hour of content. That went quick, didn't it? That just flew by. But we've got a lot more, because I'm going to take your questions in the after show. Stick around for that. We're not going away. I'm just going to put up a screen, and then I'm going to come right back. So we'll do plenty to go through. Don't forget about our success bundle at professormesser.com/netsuccess. We've also got discounted vouchers on our website. If you're in Canada, US, or a US territory, you can find that at professormesser.com/vouchers. And of course, all the sites, wherever we happen to be on the internet, you can find them all by typing in professormesser.com/discord/youtube/twitter/instagram/linkedin/ whatever it happens to be. We got a few there. I think there's probably some I need to clean up that are no longer around. We never know what's going to happen with social media, but as long as there's links, we'll put them here. If you like this video, we would love it if you would give it a thumbs up. It really does help us quite a bit with letting the folks over at YouTube know that this is content that you like and you want more of. And they've been very supportive of what we do here. And the reason they're so supportive, it's not because of anything I did. It's because of what you do. So clicking your thumbs up, subscribing to the channel, they see it. They notice it. They tell me about it. So please, if you'd like to help out, cost you nothing, and it'd be a great way to support what we do here. We sure appreciate it. Stick around for the after show. We got a lot more to go through. Plenty of questions from you coming up next in the after show. Thank you for being here, and we will see you next time on the Network Plus Study Group. Okay. I know. What is Twitter? I should probably put an X there. That seems like a bad link. Okay. Let's put me up. Let's do this. Let's click a button. There I am. Hi, everybody. Hey there. It's time for the after show. So in the after show, I guess I should set up on my side so you can see all of the information that you need to know. We have in our after show a Q&A. And there are questions in the Q&A that you can submit there we go. You could submit those in your Vevox app. So you can go to the same Vevox app with the same ID you've been using this entire time. There's a tab at the top of the screen that you can use to submit questions. So that's an easy way to do it. And you just have to put them in. They end up on my side. I can see them on my screen as you're putting them in real time. And we'll put them up on the screen so that we can all follow along and be able to see what people are asking about. So let's see. This is a pretty good one, I think, to talk about that. There's a few good ones that have really come in here. So I'm going to start with this one. This question is from Mike. Mike asks, hey, you. No, he doesn't say that. He says, are the network and security plus exams usually easier than expected once you understand the material? This is a trick question. Mike says, I remember my ITF and A+ being a lot easier than I anticipated after studying. This, I think, is probably, it seems like if you just read it as Mike is putting it in there, this seems almost obvious. Well, sure, you study something, it'll seem easier. But that, I don't think, is the question. I don't think that's what Mike is asking, because Mike has kind of hit on something that I run into constantly myself in this industry, and other people I know in this industry run into the same problem, which is problems that you run into, things that you have to troubleshoot, scenarios that you are placed into that you have to solve are, and if you don't know what's going on with that particular problem, seems almost insurmountable. There is I think it's kind of a fear of failure that I run into with these, is you're placed into a situation where you're looking at a problem, you have no idea what's going on. You don't know what that error means. You don't even know what this application does. They just told me to come down and see what I could do to help. I'm responsible now for fixing this problem. And now I'm concerned because I don't know anything about the app. I don't know anything about the error. I don't know anything about anything. I've never seen this before. And the natural part of me just wants to run away. I'm flight. We're not going to fight. I'm out of here. I'm just running down the aisle. I'm out the window. But you can't do that. You have to fix this. That's your job. You have to now solve this problem. And what I feel is when you start reading into it, like, okay, well, first let me grab the manual. I know, a manual. We do read those. They are extremely useful. Let me grab the manual. Maybe it's a PDF of the manual. Let me go to the manufacturer's website. Let me read through this. Give me an hour. Be right back. Read through the details. Okay, that's how this works. Oh, that's the screen I was seeing. Oh, that's what this app does. You kind of get a familiarity with what you're looking at. Then you start researching the error. Now that you know what the app does and what it's running on and what the requirements are and the details and maybe even other information on how to troubleshoot, maybe the manual even tells you, here's where you can get debug statistics. Oh, well, that's valuable. Let me go turn that on and we'll see what's happening. Then you can start doing research on the error message, either directly at the manufacturer or simply a Google search, a global Google search to see, is this error listed anywhere? And you can start compiling information there. What you end up with is now you know more about the application, you know more about the error message that you're seeing, and you can now put together a plan on how to solve this problem. Okay, there's a few things that we might think this would be, and now we're going down our troubleshooting flowchart from the A+ exam and the Network Plus exam, is understanding what steps to go through. Now that we've gathered information, what could it possibly be? Well, it could be this, could be this, could be this, and we just start going through them to see which one's going to fix the problem until you run across the answer. The point is, though, at the end of this, you're now more knowledgeable about the app. You're now not worried at all about moving things around the screen and clicking this and touching that, because now you're familiar with it. And everything that you were afraid of when you first sat down, all of the concerns you had, all of the anxiety that was going through your brain about, am I going to be able to do this? I know nothing about this technology. What is going on? And you really just wanted to run away. After you fix it, you think back, well, that really wasn't that hard. I went through that whole process. It was worse worrying about it than it actually was to fix it, which is sort of the normal thing in my life. I worried so much about having to fix it that I didn't actually think about what it would take to fix it and how simple it would be once we were done. And almost always at the end of this, you're looking back on it saying, that wasn't as hard as I thought it was, which is exactly what Mike said, that if you look at everything you need to study from, heck, grab one of those A-plus books. The A-plus and Network Plus books are just enormous books. Security Plus is even kind of bigger, I think. These are big books. They're enormous. And people will look at that book and say, there's no way I can study for this A-plus. There's no way I'm going to be able to pass this. There's just too much content. But then you start getting into it and you read through the first section, which goes through protocols or goes through troubleshooting or goes through Windows or whatever it happens to be. We go through that first section. You think, well, okay, I finished the first section. That wasn't so bad. Now let's do another section. And the same thing applies because it's really the same difficulty level throughout all of these exam objectives. And at the end of it, you realize, well, that was not really as hard as I thought it was. This is a common theme that you will find throughout your career in IT, is everything you don't know about is always worse than you think. You always have this expectation that this is going to be insurmountable, that there's no way that I'm going to be able to tackle this. And then you get into it, it turns out, oh, okay, that's all it was. In fact, many times it was just a configuration setting, this whole thing. I just had to change the 1 to a 2. And it solved a problem that had been happening for 6 months. And they look at you like you have solved world hunger, that cancer has been removed from the earth. No, I just changed the 1 to a 2. But it's you knowing what to change, you having the method, the process, the thought of how to make all of this happen from point A to point B to point C to point D. That's why you're there. That's why you're in this job. That's why we have you doing this, is that there's not many people in the world that can step through that the way you step through it. I think it takes a certain kind of person in IT to really make that happen the right way. So I'm with Mike, is that it seems almost insurmountable to deal with these types of certifications until you start reading them and going through the details of it. And you realize that was not as difficult as I thought it was. So I think you'll find that not just with the exams, but with pretty much everything in IT. And I often tell people, if you're in a job and you don't have that anxiety, then maybe you're not in the right job because now you know everything. How are you ever supposed to grow into a more valuable position, a position that pays you better, if you don't put yourself out there and learn things that you don't know yet? So after a while, you start to embrace that worry. And my answer has always been, when somebody says, are you going to be able to fix this? I said, I've not seen that problem before, but I know where to go to get more information on this. And I have a ton of people that I have available to talk to about this problem. And one of us is going to figure it out, and we will make this thing happen. So we will figure out what's going on. We'll figure out what we can do with it or what options might be available. Give me some time to research, and we'll figure out the details. Having that backup, having people behind you, whether it's at the manufacturer or people that you work with, is so valuable. When I was working for Palo Alto Networks as a systems engineer, I would run into problems every day, questions from customers every day. Oh, we're doing this. Can your firewall do that? Maybe it's an obscure BGP configuration. Maybe it's a specific function of OSPF. Maybe it's a feature of the VPN, the client-based VPN. And I'm like, I don't know. I haven't done that before, but I actually know exactly who to talk to about that, and I'll get back with you after this meeting. And then I talked to my SC buddy in Denver, and he'd say, oh, yeah, BGP. I used to work for an ISP. We did BGP all the time. Here's what they mean by that and what they want to do. And then I can bring that information back. Then I've learned. So now I know, and I can present that to the customer, and then anything going forward, if someone asks about it, oh, I know the answer to that. So it's really an incremental thing to make all those things happen and getting exactly where you want to go. Let's do some more questions. We've got more that have come in. Thank you for putting them into the Vevox. There's that tab at the top of the Vevox where you can plug in and make that happen. Here is a question from Ed. Ed is a machine. Ed is, I say Ed's a machine. Well, that was not what we want. There's Ed. There it is. Ed asks, Hello, Professor Messer. Thank you for all the content you provide. It's been very helpful. Is there a discount for taking multiple exams? I plan on taking Security Plus and Network Plus at the same time and was wondering if there's a discount if you take more than one exam at the same time. Thanks. No, Ed, but there is therapy we offer for people taking more than one exam at the same time, especially Security Plus and Network Plus. Ed, is there something you want to talk to us about? Is there a problem? What is going on, brother? You're taking both Security Plus and Network Plus at the same time? There must be some type of time constraint. One of the things, though, I will tell you first, this is not what you asked, but this is the answer I'm giving, is don't do this. Do not take two exams at the same time. First, I should probably answer your question. The answer is no, there's not a discount for taking multiple exams at the same time. The exam vouchers are the same amount of money whether you buy one of them or 10 of them at the same time. And I buy 10 at the time, at least. So I know that, nope, that's not going to help you. There's no discount for taking more of them, unfortunately, sadly. But that's just the way that CompTIA manages the pricing on their vouchers. So first, that's the answer. Secondly, Ed, brother, what are you doing, man? Both at the same time. The only time I've seen people do this is when there has been a time constraint and you're working or you're ready to work for a company, but they say you can't work for us unless you have your Security Plus and Network Plus. Or you've just started and they say you've got a month to get both of these done. And you're studying both of them at the same time, hoping to cram both of them in on the same day. At the very least, I would say perhaps a better strategy would be to focus on one at a time. Between the Security Plus and Network Plus, there is maybe 10% overlap. And I have looked at both of them and actually calculated that number, and it's about 10%. There is not a lot of overlap. People have mentioned the overlap between these, and sometimes I'll see people over-exaggerate what the actual overlap is. They'll say, most of this exam was the same. No, only 10%. And even then, that's 10% of the topics, but a topic regarding switches in Network Plus has a different context than a topic with switches in Security Plus. With Security Plus, we're concerned about people with rogue DHCP servers. We're concerned about spanning tree not being turned on. We're concerned about people plugging into the network in an open port and getting access. We don't have those same concerns in Network Plus. We're more concerned with what is 802.1x? What configuration settings do I configure inside of the switch? It's a little bit different in scope. So I will say there is a little bit of that. But maybe you don't have a choice, Ed. Maybe you have to do both of these at the same time. And that's reasonable then to take both of these. There is no discount, though, for doing so, sadly. And that was sort of the question. But I did just want to give you kind of my input. The same thing applies, by the way, for those of you studying for your A+. Do not take both A+ exams at the same time. Study for one exam, take that exam, then you can sort of forget about that content and move to the next exam. The A+ exams have very little overlap, much less than Network Plus and Security Plus for that matter. So they're really designed to be independent. And so I really encourage people to take one exam at a time, regardless of what it happens to be. I realize that may not be doable in your case, Ed, and hopefully you can appreciate the small amount of alleged humor that I bring to that. But if you can avoid doing that, don't do it. If you have to do it, then go get both of them, go past both of them. I'm right there with you. You're just going to have to do a lot of studying and take a lot of practice exams and really get ready. But you might be a brainiac, and we might be able to see all the veins in your head and the brain. You might be one of those, and it might happen. So go for it. I want to hear the story when it's over as well. So please send me a note, the story of that one. Next questions. Let's keep this thing going and breaking these things down. Other things on here. This is a pretty good one. It sort of goes back to something we talked about earlier. So we'll discuss this one from Z. Hey, Z. This question asks, how much should one focus on the port numbers for the test? How much? Well, let's find out because this is a common question. And focusing on port numbers, focusing on anything, what would the focus be? Well, we're going to go to the exam objectives. Here are the exam objectives. Let's make them big. I'm going to scroll through them. This is obviously for the N10-008. This is a relatively recent version, although not much changes between the versions of these. This is the N10-008 version 5, I think, right there. They always put a version number in here. The reality is not much changes between the different versions. So let's have a look. This is an exam, by the way, that has 5 different domains. It has networking fundamentals, network implementations, network operations, network security, and network troubleshooting. And they are 24, 19, 16, 19, and 22% respectively of your exam. So let's focus on the first domain, networking fundamentals. This is 24% of your exam. Let's just round it up and say it's a quarter of the exam comes from questions or topics that are in section 1, domain 1. So let's go to domain 1. Domain 1 is networking fundamentals. Domain 1 starts with section 1.1, compare and contrast the open systems interconnection model and encapsulation concepts. You can see all the bullets and topics associated with that section. Section 2, explain the characteristics of network topologies and network types, including mesh, star, bus, ring, hybrid, peer-to-peer, campus, MPLS, MGRE, smart jacks, virtual switches, satellite lease line, cable, metro optic. A lot of bullets there. Let's keep going. Finally, we're at section 1.3. Still no port numbers. Summarize the types of cables. Cat5, Cat6, Cat7, Cat8, fiber, connection types, RJ45, SFP+, patch panels, punch-down blocks, Ethernet standards. Plenty to learn there with 10G base T, 10 base T, 40G base T, fiber connections, DWDM, CWDM, WDM. All of these things you have to know. We still haven't gotten to port numbers yet. Let's keep going. Well, section 1.4, still no port numbers, bunch of IP addresses, IPv6, classes, concepts, tunneling, router. Let's just keep going. I'm sort of making a point. Finally, we're at section 1.5, and there's all the port numbers you need to know. They're just listed for you on the screen. So you've got kind of a summary. Let's make these a little bit smaller so we can see all of them at the same time. So these are all the port numbers you need to memorize for that section 1. But wait, we're not done with section 1. There's section 1.6, which is network services, section 1.7 for data center network architecture, section 1.8, cloud concepts and connectivity options, and finally, we're done with section 1. So section 1 and everything we just went through is 25% of the exam. Of section 1, of domain 1, there is one subdomain, 1.5, which happens to contain the ports and protocols. And the rest of section 1 are all of the other things that are listed here. So I tell people, yes, you should focus on port numbers because it's a thing you need to know, but you should also focus on all of the other stuff, because if you do the math and 25% of the exam is what is in domain 1, maybe you get 1 question on port numbers. Maybe you get 2. Getting 3, I think, might be pushing it a bit if it's a 90-question exam. You might not get any questions on port numbers. What? So I think we worry a lot about the rote memorization part too often, and we don't consider the scope of what we're talking about. We don't consider that there's a much larger group of things that we need to study from. We get this tunnel vision on the things we don't know. I don't know port numbers. I must know port numbers. Let's spend days and days and days studying port numbers. When in reality, you might get 1 or 2 questions and that's it. And you have to make the decision on where you spend your study time. Do I spend it on port numbers, or do I spend it on IP address ranges, or do I spend it on connector types and Ethernet standards, and do I spend it on types of network topologies? The answer is you spend it on all of them. You need to know all of these topics before you walk in. And if you know everything in this list, you're going to pass your exam. That's how sure I am of this content. CompTIA stays incredibly close to this. And if you're studying from other materials and there's topics in those materials that aren't listed in this exam objectives, you have my permission to just ignore that. For some reason, there are books and study materials you will run into that deal with topics that are on previous versions of the exam. They just don't update their content. I don't know why they don't, but they don't. And I say you stick to this. Now, if you talk to the folks that create that outdated content, they will tell you, oh no, CompTIA tells you they could put anything on the exam. Well, that part's true. CompTIA does say that other examples of technologies, processes, or tasks pertaining to each objectives may also be included on the exam, although not listed or covered in this objectives document. Oh, well, Professor Messer, you just said if I know everything in this document, I'm going to pass my exam. Well, you absolutely will pass your exam if you know everything in this document. Because although they tell you that they may include things that aren't in this list, as it turns out, they don't. They don't. They stick to this list almost to the letter. In the few times when they go outside the scope of this list, they're asking questions that probably won't be graded. So this is the exam objectives. You can find them at professormesser.com/objectives, or you can go to Professor Messer, or you go to your exam, your favorite search engine, type for CompTIA exam objectives. That's absolutely where you get that from. It's almost like a secret. It's almost a secret when you know everything in here and you're going to pass your exam. This is it. That is the full list. So I think that is a good question on how much focus you should have on port numbers. And the answer is, to some degree, don't worry so much about them. They are just part of everything else that you need to know. And you need to make the decision on how much time you spend studying those topics based on the distribution of the exam layout. And that's all listed in the objectives. So that would be very good. Along those same lines, let's talk about objectives. And another part of the objectives we haven't talked about, which is how much should you focus on acronyms list in the objectives? You've probably seen this acronym list. Let's bring up the exam objectives again, and I'll tell you what I mean by the acronyms list. I'm going to scroll past domain 1. In fact, I'm going to bring it up into single pages here. Past domain 1, past domain 2, past domain 3, and domain 4, and domain 5. And in the back of the exam list, the back of the exam objectives, is the Network Plus N10-008 acronym list. And they give you all the acronyms you need to know, pages of acronyms, 2 full pages of acronyms that are from the exam objectives. Now, these are not objectives in and of themselves. They are simply acronyms of things that will be covered as part of the objectives. For example, we talked today about EIGRP, and in these acronyms is EIGRP, the Enhanced Interior Gateway Routing Protocol. So here's a good example. What I tell people is that you are going to learn these organically as you go through the objectives. And I know a lot of people will create flashcards from these where they will begin memorizing the names in the acronyms and what they stand for. And I will say that can help you to a point, but you will not get a question on your exam that says, what do the letters EIGRP stand for? This will never be a question on your exam. That's a trivia question. Oh, EIGRP? I know from my flashcards that means Enhanced Interior Gateway Routing Protocol. I will tell you, I bet you can ask all your Cisco folks who have implemented EIGRP on their network, and you ask them, quick, what does EIGRP stand for? Let me think about that. Enhanced Exterior, extra. I don't remember. We don't remember these names. We're so used in this industry of saying, we need to install EIGRP, make sure it's configured on that router. We'll connect it over to this router, and we'll make sure they're both running EIGRP. Sounds good. I'll enable EIGRP. Thank you. And we forget there's actually words associated with that. But we know what EIGRP is. We know what the protocol does. We know what the configuration settings are. We know how to troubleshoot it. We know what the log entries look like. We know everything about EIGRP except what EIGRP stands for. It happens all the time. So I will tell you that some of these will help you on the exam because you might get a question like the one I presented earlier where all of the answers were acronyms. That was for a reason, to test if you knew which one of these it was, because sometimes the acronym can help you. However, sometimes it can't. Let me give you an example. Which one of these interfaces would most commonly be used on a fiber-based network? And one of the answers is LC. There it is, LC. LC obviously stands for local connector. Now, if you have a flashcard and you have LC, I've memorized that LC means local connector. Great. Now I know that LC is local connector. We'll slide that off because now I know it. What is that? What is a local connector? I don't know. I didn't study that part. I just studied that LC means local connector. That's your problem. That's the problem with flashcards. What you really need is a flashcard that says LC stands for local connector. It is this kind of connector. Maybe it shows you a picture. Maybe it says this is a connector associated with fiber-based technologies. This is how it compares to the others. There's got to be context. And just knowing the name and the abbreviation may not necessarily help you when you're trying to answer these questions. So yes, it might help you to know the names. It would be better if you know the names and how they are used. Know the context. And that's really the important takeaway from the objectives, specifically the acronyms that are in the objectives and what you need to look for when you're working with them. So make sure you have a look at those. Make sure you study them. And you're going to learn most of these abbreviations while you read your book, while you watch your videos, while you do hands-on. It'll just become sort of the normal part of what you do, and you'll just learn them naturally and organically that way. But if you have to go through that list or you want to go through that list, make sure that it's more than simply a flashcard trivia question. You have to know the details. Along those same lines, let's answer this one. And this question asks from F. Hey, F. Hello, Professor. What would you say a reasonable time frame to complete the Network Plus from start to finish would be? Reasonable is very open to different types of variables. So let's talk about what would be reasonable. Maybe let's talk about what's sort of the average. And the problem with averages is there can be an enormous standard deviation. So we'll talk about averages, we'll talk about deviations, and we'll talk about what causes those. I would say on average, most people will study and take their Network Plus exams in approximately 2 to 3 months. I think that's a good average number. So that sort of incorporates people's normal lives. Maybe they go to class during the day. Maybe they work at night. Maybe they have a few hours at the end of the day. Maybe they study on the weekends. But most people spend about 2 to 3 months on their Network Plus exam. Now, if you talk to me when I was studying for Network Plus, how long it took me, I would tell you 6 months. I'm a 6-month cert person because my life is full of chaos. My life is full of things that are going on all the time. I've got a wife, I've got 3 kids, I've got 3 dogs. That alone should tell you that maybe I've made good decisions, maybe, but it takes time to manage the ranch house of whatever this is that I have created here. So there's a lot of things going on in my world. And for me, I need extra time. I need plenty of time. And I really like to study the topics. I really like to understand them from the ground up. Sometimes I will pass over a couple topics like, okay, I got it. We'll just keep it going. But I'm more comfortable in an exam if I've really gone through the details. So when people talk about how long should I spend to do this, your time, your reasonable time frame to complete the Network Plus from start to finish is based on however long it takes you to go through the objectives. And maybe that's how you start. Hit section 1.1, compare and contrast the OSI model. And then you read all about the OSI model and you figure out what data encapsulation does and what an Ethernet header is and what an IP header is and how TCP and UDP fit into this and what TCP flags are and what a payload is and what an MTU is. So learn everything you need to know about that. Okay, well that is like 1/9 of that first section. That took me a weekend, or that took me a day, or that took me a week. Okay, based on that, maybe it's a week for each of these sections or similarly sized sections. And you can extrapolate from there. Okay, it's going to take me this many weeks because I have this many sections. So after you do a couple of these sections, you kind of get it down, you sort of get into the flow, you'll be able to estimate yourself how long it should take you. Everybody has a different study plan. Everybody has a different calendar. Everybody has their own amount of chaos. So you have to take that into account. Nobody's going to follow the same path that you are. Everybody's going to work a little bit differently using different study materials in different ways. But I think on average 2 to 3 months is pretty good. I think that you need to definitely customize that for your own purposes. But I think that's a pretty good number to at least start from. And then you can figure out, oh, am I somebody who gets it done faster, or am I somebody that gets it done slower, or am I pretty much right there in that middle? Now, I mentioned there's a standard deviation there, which means 2 to 3 months, and there's probably a number of weeks around that. So it's really a broad curve there in the middle, I think. I think there's a pretty good deviation. I think everybody kind of fits into that 2 to 3 months. So you could say that in the curve, in the center, there's quite a few people in that center curve. And I think it sort of flattens off as you get further ahead and further behind. I think it's all stats to me. So that's where I would start your planning, and then you'll figure it out as you go along. Oh, I can get it done faster than 2 to 3 months, or I need to take more time than 2 to 3 months. Just do whatever it takes for you to pass the exam. There's no time frame. Nobody's on a clock. To that same point, just so you can put this one in your pocket, if you study for 2 to 3 months and you go to take the exam and you don't pass the exam, big deal. You just take the exam again. That was it. That is the downside of this, is that there is no downside. That's it. Is that really a downside? No, it's not. There is no downside. There's nothing that's going to hurt anybody by you failing the exam. I have failed certification exams before. I'm not happy when I fail the exam. And as the chat room is clearly pointing out, you lost some money. Yeah, that's painful. Absolutely. But nobody died. You didn't lose anything in your life. You come home, family's still there, the dogs are still greeting you at the door, everything's normal. You just take the exam again. In fact, you've now got intel. They will tell you the topics you did not get correct. And you can now, section 1.5, I didn't get some questions correct. Wait, those are port numbers. Let me go study my port numbers some more. So that's the thing. Now, obviously, the chat room's now making up scenarios where it's awful that you don't pass your exam. Yeah, what if it was your job, man? Now you can't. Okay, I get that one. Yes, I agree. There are corner cases where you really do have to pass the exam or bad things happen. But for the in fact, it's very rare to run into those scenarios either. Very, very unusual. Most of the time, you take the exam. If you don't pass, you just go study some more and you take it again. That's it. So don't worry so much about the details. You'll be able to figure all of those out. I don't think that's going to be a problem for you. Let's do some more questions. We have a little bit of time left. I would love to step through a couple of others. There's one that came in. I don't want to pick on a couple here. Oh, somebody was asking about vouchers. So let's talk about those real quick, since I'm familiar with vouchers. This is from Michael, who asks, how long is the voucher good for? I would like to start studying the exam hacks book, but I would like to have quite a while before I take the test, which is completely reasonable, Michael. I like the concept there. The vouchers that you would get on my site and the vouchers you get directly from CompTIA, really vouchers really from everyone, are good for a year, unless for some reason they had some sitting around for a very long time and they're mentioning a different date to you. I don't keep vouchers around for a very long time. They go out the door quick. So you usually receive a voucher from me that is dated 1 year, or 1 year minus 1 day, because I have to buy it and then send it to you. So there's this time frame of about a year. It's a year. It's 365 or 364 days, depending on when I get it to you. So that is the worry about that is there is no worry. There's a year of time. Now I will tell you that's pretty important. Other people in the chat room are going, yeah, but what if the exam goes away? Doesn't matter. The voucher is not for an exam version. The voucher is for the type of exam. So when you get a Security Plus voucher, you can take any Security Plus exam with that voucher. 601, 701. Let's say they change the version of the exam every day. Your voucher is good for a year to take the Security Plus exam, whatever Security Plus exam it is that you want to take during that year. The voucher you get for Network Plus is good for any Network Plus exam you want to take during that year. The voucher you get for A Plus is good for any A Plus exam you want to take during that year. So you're good. You don't have to worry about what exam happens to be there. It is a little confusing, though. If you go out to the CompTIA website, they will tell you that this voucher is for the 601 exam, and this voucher is for the 701 exam. They're actually the same voucher. There's a little inside baseball for you. It's the same exact voucher. There's no difference between those vouchers. They are identical. It doesn't have an exam version number associated with it. You can use it on any Security Plus exam if it's a Security Plus voucher. So don't worry so much about that. But it's good for a year. So this kind of throws a curveball to some people, is that I've sent vouchers out and it says on the voucher, let's say you bought it today, you would get an email from me that said this voucher is good until September. What is the day? I don't even know what day it is. This is bad. Today is September 17th, September 13th. Today's 13th. So September 13th, the voucher is good to September 13th, 2024. And they'll look at that and go, oh, it's only good until today. And then they rush to get their exam scheduled. Now, technically, it's not a big deal because you can schedule the exam. You have to take your exam before the voucher date is there. So not only is this voucher good until September 13th of next year, you have to finish your exam by September 13th of next year as well. So that's an important date. But sometimes people will misread it when they receive it and they think it expires today and they rush to go schedule their exam. Fortunately, you can reschedule the exam farther into the future, so you haven't lost anything by doing that. But don't worry when you get it, because some people will send this back to me and say, I just got this, but it was the next day, and now the voucher, it's expired. Like, nope, it's good for another 364 days. I go, oh, it says 2024. We just skip over it. I skip over it. So you just miss it. Like, nope, you got a year. I'm like, oh, good. Okay, thank goodness. So don't worry. It's good for a year. Now, if you go to another website that's not mine, you go to a third-party website out there that is a CompTIA partner, and it's a legitimate website, they may have vouchers that they've had that have been sitting around, and maybe they're only good for 6 months. And they'll tell you, well, you can buy these, and maybe they have a discount on them because they're 6 months. I don't know. I've seen 30-day vouchers out there somewhere. I've never offered a 30-day voucher. That sounds kind of, I guess it has some value if it's discounted. That's the only time I think you would ever see a discount like that. Those are unusual to find. I think those were probably a project that was going on and they had vouchers left over and they were able to resell them to you. But and you should check, make sure every voucher that you're getting says 1 year. And if you look into the terms and conditions on my website, it says at the bottom, all the vouchers here are good for approximately 1 year. And that works out perfect. So there you go. That is how long those vouchers are good for. You don't have to worry about the vouchers getting bad. Although I've had people buy a voucher and then it gets down to the date when the voucher is expiring. They say, I've got this voucher, but it expires tomorrow. What can I do? I said, well, you got to book the exam and take it before tomorrow. You don't have a choice. You have to use it. And if you can't get one scheduled by tomorrow, call CompTIA, contact them, and tell them, I want to take this exam. Maybe they'll have a way they can stretch that out. Don't ever think you've run into a problem with your vouchers and there's some type of problem. Run it by me if you're wondering. Send me a message with the Contact Us link and say, here's the situation I'm in. What can I do? And I kind of know the inner workings of what's going on at CompTIA. I am a platinum partner from CompTIA. There's only like 20 of those in the world. So I've got some idea of what to do, and I have people I can contact and ask if I have questions about those. But we have flexibility at that point. If you decide, well, I'm just not going to take it, and you've now gone past the date, and then you contact me and say, well, my voucher expired last week. Now what do I do? Like, if you had contacted me before it expired, there was a lot more things I can do than after it expires. So don't ever hesitate to ask me. Worst case, if you run into a glitch like that or a weird thing, because there's things we can do if we have the flexibility. And this is one of those where just communication is key. It makes all the difference. Don't think that you've lost it all, or that there's now the voucher is worthless. What am I going to? There may be options. So just contact me and we'll figure out what options might be there. It might be that the voucher is no longer good, but unless we start looking into it and figuring it out, I can't help you. So I want to help you. So just leave me a message. We'll work through it. Other questions. Keep going. I know we're close to the top of the hour, so want to get a couple more in here. I think there's another one in here, and I want to. I don't want to deal with that one. Nope, let's not do that one. I'm not throwing out questions. Some of these are not questions. Some of these are just people saying, thanks so much. So we're not putting those in that list. And you're very welcome. Other questions. Here we go. So this is actually a pretty good one from Josh Z. Mr. Z says, about to take my Network Plus on Friday, 2 days from now. This is a good time to contact me. Maybe a few days earlier would have been good, but we'll talk about that. Did all your videos. What can I do to review now? I think about a week before your exam, you can probably guess what I'm going to say. About a week before your exam, you need to go to the CompTIA website and download the exam objectives if you don't have them already. This is your checklist. You start at the front and you say, compare and contrast the OSI model. Layer 1 physical. Can you explain to yourself or to someone else what layer 1 of the OSI model means, what it references, why it's called physical? Great. Let's go to the next one. Layer 2, data link. What do you know about layer 2 data link layer? What good is that? How is it used? What devices use layer 2? What devices operate at layer 2 of the OSI model? What about layer 3, which is the network layer? What devices operate at layer 3, and why do we call it that layer? What do we do with it? How do we know it's layer 3? So go through this list. This is the definitive list. And if you can put check marks next to every single one of these, you're ready to take your exam. Maybe it's not all of them. 95% of these, 90%. If you can do 90% of these, I'd be happy. So just put check marks on all of these exam objectives. These are the exam objectives. You can find a link of that to these objectives at professormesser.com/objectives, or simply search for CompTIA exam objectives. This is the key to passing. Everything is in here. Everything you need to know. And this is a great checklist. That's why I said about a week before would be ideal, because it takes time to go through all of these. And if you don't know something, maybe you've gotten into this and they say TCP flags. You're thinking, oh, I don't really know. I don't remember what the flags were about. What do those do? I forget. Okay, let's circle that one, or we'll mark it. I marked these with different colors in my PDF reader because I can annotate in my PDF reader. So that was one where knowing the I didn't know the TCP flags. Let's circle it. And there's a topic I need to study before I go into my exam. It is the exam objectives is the answer. So if you're about to take your Network Plus, review everything in the objectives. Circle the things you don't know. Go read more about them. That is the way to do it. And if you've got some other study materials, that's your reference. You can reference that against the exam objectives, and you'll have a pretty good idea of what you know and what you don't know right after that. That's a good way to study, especially if your exam is coming up. You don't have a lot of time. 2 days, you still have time. You still got time to go through those objectives. You can go through all of them in a day, circle the things you really need, and then you go study up on those circled things, and now go stop in and go get the exam objectives. There you go. That's the way you do it. Other questions. Let's keep going down this list of different questions. This is a pretty good one. Speaking of vouchers, this is more of kind of a niche question, but I think it's an important one to consider. I have a voucher for A+ and Network Plus, but then I realize I'm not going to take those. Can I exchange them for Security Plus? Well, unfortunately, no. The CompTIA voucher store does not accept returns or trades, And I follow the same rules that they do because I'm the one who follows those rules from them. They won't allow me to trade or exchange or get a refund. So unfortunately, I can't pass that same thing on to people because I have no way to do that because CompTIA doesn't allow me either. Sometimes Platinum doesn't help me with those, and that's one that doesn't. However, I will tell you that you have a perfectly usable A+ voucher. You have a perfectly usable Network Plus voucher. There are other people in the world that need A+ vouchers and Network Plus vouchers, and you might be able to provide it to them. Maybe you take a little bit of hit, or maybe you sell it for the same price you sold it for. Technically speaking, on the CompTIA website, in their terms and conditions, they do not allow for their vouchers to be resold. However, there's no way to know if you sell them. There's nothing that is associating that voucher with you. There's nothing there, and they don't care, quite honestly, if they're about a connection between the voucher and an individual. They don't have time to keep up with that level of detail. The voucher is not tied to you unless you schedule an exam. Once you schedule the exam, you use your voucher to pay for it. At that point, the voucher is gone. You got rid of it. It's disappeared. It's worthless. It doesn't exist. It can't be used to schedule an exam again. So if you have scheduled your A+ and your Network Plus, you got to take those exams. There's nothing you can do. You can't give those to someone else or sell them to someone else. But if you have the vouchers and you have not used them, you may sell them, albeit breaking the terms of use, but also meaning nothing in that context because anybody's able to use them. They're not tied to you. So that's sort of a, I don't want to say it's a sneaky way to do it, but it's totally a sneaky way to do it. That's sort of the deal with the vouchers, is that you're not supposed to. They have no way to stop you from doing it and no way to tell if you have. So it's sort of one of those kind of rules. Don't do it or else we won't do anything. Well, there's no penalty. You can absolutely do that. So it's very easy to sell or give away these vouchers to someone else. And there are a number of ways you can promote that. I don't think CompTIA subreddit allows that. You can't sell them on my site because sometimes we don't know where people get these vouchers from. There is certainly a group of people that obtain vouchers in ways that would not be ethical. And I don't want to be part of somebody and being their sales mechanism for credit card fraud. And so that's a concern. So I think that probably has something to do with that why you can't sell them as part of the terms and conditions. But this is one where somebody knows you, they're comfortable buying it from you, there's nothing stopping you from selling it and nothing that stops them from using it. So you're good there. And then you can take that money and apply it towards a Security Plus voucher and you're good to go. So just something to think about. Those terms and conditions on the vouchers are very specific. And I make sure that you see them when you go to the voucher page. I make sure that when you get the voucher, you also get a copy of them. In the email I send you with the voucher, there's also a copy of the terms and conditions. So you always know they're right there at your fingertips. You can easily see. And in reality, they're not so bad. Their only thing is you can't refund them, you can't exchange them, but pretty much everything else is in there. There's some specifics around dates and times and how you can use the voucher. Those are important to know as well. Make sure you read on those what the terms and conditions are, because you will be digitally checking a box and signing, yes, I agree to those terms and conditions when you check out. Thank you, my lawyer, for making me do all of those things. That's sort of the way the world works when it comes to these vouchers. Just keep that in mind. And if you know the rules, you can pretty much follow exactly what they'd like you to do. I know we're at the top of the hour. We're going to do one more question, though, to get through this. This is kind of a question about studying and study materials, which I happen to know something about. This question is from Anonymous. Anonymous says, is Cisco Packet Tracer a good resource for hands-on experience for the Network Plus exam, Professor? It can be. It can also not be. So let me give you some context. For those of you not familiar with Cisco Packet Tracer, it is a free program you can get from Cisco. It's sort of free. You have to register with Cisco. Some would say that would not be free then, but it doesn't cost you any money Let's put it that way. Packet Tracer is a utility created by Cisco that provides you with a way to simulate a Cisco and in some ways other products on a network. It's a network simulation tool. It's more of an, it's definitely simulation. It's not really an emulator because it's not using this. Packet Tracer is a very, very useful utility if you are studying for Cisco because it's very Cisco-centric. I'm going to pull up my Packet Tracer just so we can see it, except I have to log in. And do I remember my login credentials? I do not. But I do have a database that I can use to pull those out. I'm just not sure. Is it if it's under my Cisco, is it under Packet Tracer? Yes, it is. Network Academy. And there's what I used, and there's my email address. I know you can't see this because I don't want you to see this, but I'm going to type this in, and I'm going to put in my password, and then you'll at least see what the interface looks like, kind of step you through a few things. Did I put that in right? We're going to find out, everybody. Packet Tracer. I think I did it. So this is Packet Tracer. Packet Tracer is a utility that you can see it's just a blank slate on this. Packet Tracer is, sorry, we'll come back to this in a moment. I'm sort of moving windows around here. So you got a blank screen. Down here at the bottom, you've got things you can pull from. There's routers, there's switches, there's end devices, there's hubs even in this. I don't know either. But you can grab a router that's in this list, and you can kind of stick it on the screen. There's our router. I've created a Cisco router. It'd be good if this was a little bit bigger. Can I make it bigger? Yeah, I can. It's making it bigger. Here, I'm kind of moving around the screen way too much. And now I've made it so big that I've lost it. You're welcome. There it is. I see it up there. Now, doing an awful job of demonstrating Packet Tracer. Oh, no, seriously, I did this for a living. No, I would do demonstrations for a living. So there's Packet Tracer. Did I already lose it? It's right there. So here's our router. And the router it works and looks and acts like a real Cisco router. There's the way it looks on the outside. Here is the settings you can configure with IP addresses and how you want to route. Or you can just go to the CLI. Here's the CLI of a Cisco router. Looks just like a Cisco router would look. There it is. You know, that is the way that you would. Whoop. So if you're going through this list, that's the way you would configure it at the command line. But it also provides a little bit of a GUI if you wanted to go through the GUI side of it. And when you're working through it, you can even configure it. Oh, well, I want this in that slot. And, well, I've got the power on. But you can drag these modules and stick them into a module you want to put them in. And then you just start building out your network. Well, I got a switch. I'm going to need a router. I'm going to need a switch in here. And maybe we have it across a WAN link. And I can start configuring WAN link connections between these by simply connecting the devices together. You know, if I had different devices to plug in, I don't have any ports on there of those types to plug in. But this is where you would now start building out a network. Let's go from the gigabit Ethernet to that connection. I know it's a console, but you get the idea. You very quickly can put devices in here, configure them, configure IP addresses, routing, switching, play with configuration settings, build out entire networks, and you can download network configurations from the internet that other people have put together kind of as a Q&A and build out your own networks design from what people have already done. It's a great tool to use if you're learning Cisco. But I would tell you, from the perspective of Network Plus, way overkill. Completely unnecessary. You do not need this for your Network Plus. It almost adds more complexity because there is an enormous, I wouldn't say enormous, there's an enormous learning curve into the Cisco product line, especially at the command line. And people often say, well, don't take Network Plus, take CCNA, which definitely leads you into Packet Tracer quite a bit. But the amount of additional knowledge you need to pass CCNA is much more than Network Plus. These are very different certification exams. The Network Plus is an entry-level exam. I would say the Cisco Certified Network Administrator, or CCNA exam, is a intermediate level cert. So that gives you a perspective of why they made Packet Tracer that way, because you're going to be working at the command line. You're going to be configuring things at the command line. You have to memorize command line settings in Cisco, none of which you need to know for Network Plus. However, the topics that you're doing in this utility, maybe you're configuring a switch, maybe you're turning on spanning tree, maybe you're looking at routing tables, maybe you're looking at different protocols and setting them up. Well, all of those things are in Network Plus. This is sort of a lab that begins integrating those things together. The problem is this is not a point and click lab. This is a very complex lab with a lot of time that takes to get to a point where you really understand what you're doing with it. So by default, I would tell you, do not use Packet Tracer if all you're doing is trying to learn Network Plus. Now, let's say you've already worked hard at learning everything that's in the Network Plus exam objectives, that you have gone through the process of really understanding everything, and now you just want to learn a little more about the Cisco part. Well, that's where Packet Tracer can help you. But I don't think if you are purely studying for Network Plus, I would tell you to avoid Packet Tracer. It's way too much information that's way out of scope for your Network Plus exam. What's going to help you, though, is if you keep going on this line of using networks as your career goal, and you move into a role where you want to be more of a network administrator, a switch administrator, a router administrator, a network designer or planner. You may want to get some Cisco certifications. And when you get into Packet Tracer, you can see, oh, well, look, there's spanning tree. I remember learning that in Network Plus. Oh, and here's some MAC level spoofing configurations in my switch. I remember talking about those with Network Plus. Oh, and here's where you would turn on the wide area network connections. We talked about WANs in Network Plus. So you build on Network Plus when you start working through the Cisco. But I would say, although Packet Tracer is an amazing tool and it's great for studying Cisco certifications, it's a little bit overboard for the Network Plus. I would rather focus you into labs that have been made specifically for Network Plus. On my site, there is the Network Plus Labs. They are fantastic. They are from CompTIA. They are a CompTIA CertMaster Labs product, and they're very well done. The labs apply to Network Plus exclusively. They're in a fantastic environment. They are well designed, and I think that'd be a much better place to learn what you need to learn from a lab perspective for the Network Plus. Now, once you get into CCNA, maybe that will be useful, that you can use some of these other tools. But for Network Plus, I would recommend you avoid those. It's not really going to give you what you want and be able to work with them. Anyway, that's the idea anyway, and hopefully that gives you a perspective of where I'm coming from. There should be it's kind of the study from the right things the right way, and I think you'll be better positioned to pass your Network Plus exam than maybe studying from devices that give you way too much to worry about, or at least when you're stepping through those. So hopefully that gives you an idea anyway. That is on my main site. It's on the Professor Messer website. If you want more information on the CertMaster Labs, they are on the Professor Messer website under the Network Plus settings. You can either go to Start Here, which will list them. That's a good place to go if you're starting your exam. The Start Here page will first tell you where the videos are, where all the other free materials are, the study groups, the chat that we have on Discord, the free weekly pop quiz. It's all in the start. And then if you need other tools, our Success Bundle and Course Notes is there, and the vouchers are here. And then, of course, you've got the CertMaster Learn, the CertMaster books. Or I guess they're the CompTIA books. They don't call those CertMaster. The CertMaster Practice Test Pack and the CertMaster Interactive Pack, which is the CertMaster Labs. And those have all of the labs. In fact, I have a video there. You can watch me go through the labs and get a feel for exactly how those work. Look at that guy. You can't see him because I'm on the screen. I'm up there, I'm talking just like this guy, but it gives you labs that you could step through. And I give you an example. We even run through one of these labs so you can see what does it take to, in fact, this one's using Kali to do some things with. So those are the labs that are on my site. That's something to give you an idea of what might fit a little bit better than something like Packet Tracer. Both have their advantages and disadvantages, of course, but if you're studying for Network Plus, I would rather you study for materials specifically designed for Network Plus. That's going to maximize your time for studying. Well, that, I think, gets us to the end of another study group. Thank you so much for being here. We cannot do these without you, and we have so much fun doing them every time. We do one of these every month for Network Plus. We have another one scheduled next week for Security Plus. I've already written the questions. They're already in there, ready to go. All we need is you. So come on back Wednesday of next week. If you ever want to know when the next live event is going to be, you can always check the calendar at professormesser.com/calendar, or you can check the events channel on our Discord. That's where I'm going right now, is over to our Discord once we finish up here. You should join us too. It's a great community. You can join us at professormesser.com/Discord. Thank you so much for being here. Thanks for joining us, and we will see you next time on the Network Plus Study Group. Thanks, everybody.